It all began when Alexei Navalny made a daring move. He decided to return to Russia after surviving a poisoning attempt last year. It was a symbolic act of defiance, one that triggered one of the biggest protests that President Putin has had to face. Our next report tells you how Vladimir Putin's most outspoken critic is challenging Russia's modern-day czar.
Мальчик, водочки нам принеси, мадам Алексей.
This was a humorous yet bold declaration from Alexei Navalny and his wife. But for the Russian president, it was a challenge. Navalny's arrival in Russia was beamed across the world via the internet. A much-anticipated return after a near-fatal poisoning attempt. But barely minutes after his plane landed in Moscow, Alexei Navalny was arrested. These pictures of Navalny being whisked away by cops from the courtroom went viral and fueled a massive public rally. Last Saturday, supporters of Navalny braved the bitter cold and attempts at intimidation. Tens of thousands turned up to demand Navalny's release. More than 3,000 citizens were arrested in 109 cities across Russia. Despite the crackdown, the protesters have not relented. They announced a new round of rallies. Despite Putin's tight grip on power, Alexei Navalny has managed to build an opposition movement. Something that barely existed almost a decade ago. Navalny started his movement with a blog that investigated and exposed corruption in state tenders and government contracts.
Это прямо отдельное государство внутри России. И в этом государстве есть единственный...
On the back of the expose, Navalny built up his media organization, the Anti-Corruption Foundation, that probes corruption and abuse of power in Russia. Navalny has been leading all these efforts with his tough, populist and humorous style. After surviving last year's poisoning attempt, Navalny began investigating the attempt on his life. While he was still in Germany, teaming up with journalists, Navalny was able to identify 8 people. He even managed to extract a confession, allegedly from the man who tried to kill him.
Возможно, да, если чуть дольше летел, например, они посадили его там резко как-то и так далее, да, возможно, это все пошло не так.
For the Kremlin, Navalny remains the greatest domestic enemy. Before last year's poisoning attempt, Navalny was arrested repeatedly and detained for protesting. Navalny faces 4 legal cases. He says all of them are politically motivated. Even Navalny's brother Oleg has faced the Russian state's wrath. Oleg Navalny was put behind bars for close to 4 years over charges of fraud. An international human rights group had called Navalny's brother a political prisoner. Navalny is said to have returned to Russia for what many are calling a final fight against the Russian president. The world has its eyes on this showdown. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.